Setting the stage: America's transformation, 1950 to 2000. The United States emerged from World War II a changed nation. The year 1950 marked the beginning of immense change, grappling with newfound global power and internal divisions. Over the next 5 decades, the U.S. experienced economic prosperity, technological advancements, and a cultural revolution. From the post-war boom to the digital age, the latter half of the 20th century was a time of both triumph and turmoil. The fight for civil rights and the Cold War defined this transformative era. An economic powerhouse emerges. The 1950s witnessed an unprecedented economic boom in the United States. Returning GIs armed with the GI Bill fueled a surge in homeownership, leading to the rise of suburbia. Car ownership skyrocketed, transforming the landscape with interstate highways and drive-in theaters. New appliances like refrigerators and televisions became commonplace. However, prosperity was not enjoyed equally. African Americans faced discrimination and segregation. The seeds of social change were sown amidst economic abundance. The Cold War, a global chess match. The United States and the Soviet Union engaged in a high-stakes rivalry, shaping global politics. The Cold War was fought through proxy wars, espionage, and a nuclear arms race. The fear of communist infiltration led to McCarthyism, a period of intense anti-communist paranoia. Senator Joseph McCarthy's baseless accusations created a climate of fear and suspicion. The Red Scare left a lasting legacy on American politics and culture. The Korean War, the first test of containment. The Korean War, from 1950 to 1953, marked the first major military conflict of the Cold War. The U.S. intervened to defend South Korea against communist North Korea. The war tested the U.S. commitment to containing communism. The Korean War ended in an armistice, leaving Korea divided at the 38th parallel. The conflict solidified the division of Korea and intensified the Cold War rivalry. The 1960s witnessed the rise of the civil rights movement, challenging racial segregation and discrimination. Led by figures like Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, and Rosa Parks, the movement sought to dismantle Jim Crow laws. From the Montgomery bus boycott to the March on Washington, the movement gained momentum. Images of peaceful protesters being attacked shocked the nation and galvanized support. The movement faced fierce resistance from segregationists. The bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church was a stark reminder of the hatred faced. Despite dangers, the movement persisted, challenging segregation in every aspect of American life. As the civil rights movement fought for equality, the U.S. became embroiled in the Vietnam War. Initially, involvement was limited to military advisors, but the conflict escalated. The Vietnam War was unlike any conflict the U.S. had fought before. The war became deeply divisive at home with growing opposition. Anti-war protests erupted, fueled by the growing casualty count and the draft. The Tet Offensive in 1968 further eroded public support for the war. The Vietnam War left a deep scar on the American psyche. Amidst the turmoil, the space race captured the nation's imagination. The US and the Soviet Union sought to demonstrate their technological prowess. The Soviet Union's launch of Sputnik 1 in 1957 sparked fears and investment in science education. President Kennedy set a bold goal to land a man on the moon before the end of the decade. The Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo programs marked significant milestones. On July 20, 1969, Apollo 11 astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walked on the moon. The moon landing was a moment of national pride and unity. The 1970s began with the after-effects of the Vietnam War and faced new challenges. The Watergate scandal, a political earthquake, altered the American political landscape. What began as a break-in at the Democratic National Committee unraveled into a web of conspiracy. Investigative journalists uncovered a trail of dirty tricks and a cover-up implicating the White House. Congressional hearings revealed a culture of paranoia and lawlessness within the Nixon administration. Nixon's secret recordings confirmed his involvement in the cover-up, shocking the nation. The Watergate scandal shook the nation's confidence, but economic troubles loomed. The American economy faced stagflation, a combination of inflation and unemployment. An energy crisis gripped the nation in the early 1970s. OPEC's oil embargo in 1973 led to skyrocketing gas prices and long lines at gas stations. The crisis exposed the fragility of the American economy and its dependence on foreign oil. It led to fuel efficiency standards, the Alaska pipeline, and interest in alternative energy sources. Amidst political scandals and economic woes, environmental awareness grew in the 1970s. The environmental movement gained momentum, raising awareness about pollution and resource depletion. Rachel Carson's Silent Spring alerted the public to the dangers of pesticides. The first Earth Day in 1970 marked a turning point in environmental awareness. The movement led to significant legislative achievements, including the creation of the EPA. The Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, and Endangered Species Act aimed to protect the environment. The 1980s ushered in an era of conservatism with Ronald Reagan's election. Reagan promised to restore national pride, reduce government role, and stand firm against the Soviet Union. Reaganomics aimed to stimulate economic growth through tax cuts and reduced regulation. Critics argued Reaganomics benefited the wealthy and exacerbated income inequality. Despite criticism, Reagan remained popular, his optimism resonating with many Americans. His presidency marked a shift toward a more conservative approach in American politics. Reagan's presidency coincided with a period of heightened tension in the Cold War. Reagan, who famously referred to the Soviet Union as the evil empire, took a hard line against communism, increasing military spending, deploying intermediate-range nuclear missiles to Europe, and supporting anti-communist movements around the world. The Reagan administration's support for the Contras in Nicaragua, a rebel group fighting the leftist Sandinista government, became a particularly controversial aspect of its Cold War policy. However, beneath the surface of confrontation, the seeds of change were being sown within the Soviet Union itself. Mikhail Gorbachev, who became General Secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union in 1985, recognized the need for reform. Gorbachev's policies of glasnost, or openness, and perestroika, or restructuring, aimed to address the Soviet Union's economic stagnation and its lack of political freedom. Gorbachev's reforms, though intended to save the Soviet system, ultimately contributed to its demise. Reagan, recognizing the opportunity presented by Gorbachev's reforms, shifted from a posture of confrontation to one of engagement. He met with Gorbachev on several occasions, seeking common ground on arms control and other issues. The two leaders developed a rapport, and their summits became symbols of hope for a more peaceful future. In 1987, Reagan and Gorbachev signed the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces, or INF Treaty, eliminating an entire class of nuclear weapons. The INF Treaty was a landmark achievement, the first treaty to eliminate nuclear weapons, rather than simply limiting their deployment. It was a testament to the power of diplomacy, and a sign that the Cold War was nearing its end. The winds of change sweeping through the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe proved unstoppable. The Berlin Wall crumbled as East Germans demanded the right to travel freely. The fall of the Berlin Wall on November 9, 1989, was a victory for freedom. It marked the end of an era, the collapse of the Soviet Empire, and the triumph of democracy. The reunification of Germany became a reality in 1990. The Cold War was finally over. The United States emerged as the sole superpower. The world looked to the United States for leadership in the post-Cold War era. The 1990s in the United States dawned with a sense of optimism and possibility. A technological revolution was underway, fueled by personal computers and the rise of the internet. This digital revolution created boundless opportunities, especially in the tech sector. The internet transformed into a tool for communication, commerce, and entertainment. The dot-com boom fueled innovation and speculation, driving economic growth. The 1990s also witnessed the acceleration of globalization, a process of increased interconnectedness and interdependence among nations, driven by advances in transportation, communication, and information technology. Globalization had profound impacts on the United States economy, as American businesses increasingly operated in a global marketplace. facing competition from foreign companies and seeking new markets for their products and services. One of the most significant manifestations of globalization in the 1990s was the passage of the North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA, in 1994. NAFTA, a trade agreement between the United States, Canada, and Mexico, aimed to eliminate tariffs and other barriers to trade between the three countries, creating a free trade zone encompassing much of North America. Proponents of NAFTA argued that it would boost economic growth, create jobs, and lower prices for consumers. Opponents, however, contended that it would lead to job losses in the United States, as companies moved operations to Mexico to take advantage of lower wages and less stringent environmental regulations. Globalization also had significant cultural impacts, as American culture, from Hollywood movies and music to fast food and fashion, spread around the globe, often met with a mix of fascination and resistance. The internet played a key role in this cultural exchange, connecting people from different cultures and backgrounds and fostering a greater awareness of global issues. However, globalization also sparked a backlash in some quarters, as critics argued that it was leading to a homogenization of cultures, a loss of national sovereignty, and a widening gap between the haves and have-nots. With the Cold War over, the United States faced new challenges and opportunities on the world stage. The United States emerged as the world's sole superpower, its military and economic might unmatched. The 1990s tested American power with regional conflicts, humanitarian crises, and new threats like global terrorism. The first major test came in 1991 when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. President George H.W. Bush launched Operation Desert Storm to liberate Kuwait. The Gulf War was a decisive victory, showcasing American military power. This marked a new era of American interventionism in global conflicts. The latter half of the 20th century stands as a testament to the transformative power of history. The United States, emerging from the ashes of World War II, embarked on a journey marked by both remarkable progress and profound upheaval. From the economic boom and suburban sprawl of the 1950s to the social and political earthquakes of the 1960s, the nation wrestled with its identity, its values, and its place in the world. The Cold War, a global chess match played out over decades, cast a long shadow, shaping foreign policy, fueling technological innovation, and influencing domestic politics. The struggle for civil rights, a moral imperative that could no longer be ignored, awakened the nation's conscience, challenging deeply ingrained prejudices and leading to landmark legislation that redefined the meaning of equality. The Vietnam War, a divisive conflict that tore at the fabric of society, left an indelible mark, forcing a reassessment of American power and the limits of military intervention. Through it all, the American spirit of innovation and resilience endured. The space race, a testament to human ingenuity and ambition, captivated the world, culminating in the triumph of the Apollo 11 moon landing. The digital revolution, sparked by the invention of the microchip and the rise of the internet, transformed the way Americans lived, worked, and interacted with each other in the world. Globalization, a force both lauded and feared, accelerated, intertwining American destiny ever more closely with the fates of nations around the globe. As the 20th century drew to a close, the United States stood at a crossroads, its past a prologue to an uncertain future. The Cold War had ended, leaving the United States as the world's sole superpower, but new challenges and threats emerged to test its resolve and its capacity for leadership. The rise of global terrorism, the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, the interconnectedness of a globalized economy, and the looming threat of climate change presented complex and daunting problems with no easy solutions. The legacy of the 20th century, with its triumphs and its tragedies, its moments of unity and its periods of division, continued to shape the American experience in the 21st century. The nation, founded on principles of liberty, equality, and opportunity, grappled with the enduring challenges of fulfilling those ideals for all its citizens, regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, religion, or sexual orientation. The quest for a more perfect union, an ongoing process of self-examination and renewal, remains central to the American story. The United States, a nation forged in revolution, shaped by immigration, and tested by adversity, entered the 21st century with the same spirit of innovation, determination, and belief in the possibility of progress that had carried it through previous challenges. The journey ahead promised to be no less transformative than the journey that had brought the nation to this point, a journey marked by both uncertainty and hope, a journey that would continue to shape the destiny of the United States and its role in the world.